into it. You also spoke about how speaking is largely emotional appeal,
Yes.
very visual.
No question.
Maya Angelou once said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
A key theme of my teaching. Yeah.
Right. You've had the honor and privilege of meeting many influential people in your life. One trait that I've heard about many influential people, they've been described by others as well, is they had this aura around them when they enter a room. And anyone who's telling you about it has to end it by saying you had to be there to experience it. You just, no words can do it justice. And just to explain it to laymen like me, they use words like aura, magic,
Gravitas.
yeah, magnetism, energy,
charisma. It's all there.
And then it always has to end with, but it doesn't do it justice. You had to be there.
Right.
Just the way they enter the room, when they look at you, when they speak, there is something there. There is a presence there.
Yeah.
Have you felt this in your life? And is there a name, one influential person that just comes to your mind when I talk about this?
No question. Well, what you're describing is something called executive presence. And executive presence has three foundations: appearance, communication. Now, appearance and communication are straightforward, well, relatively so. They're art forms, but they're straightforward. The third is the X factor. It's called gravitas. And gravitas is, I don't know exactly what you just described. I don't know what they did, but God, it was good how they did it. What I know, in fact, what I often teach people when I'm in a coaching session is entrances and exits. And Shakespeare said very early on, all the world is a stage and we are but merely players. Mind your entrance and your exits. What these people that you just described do is they know how to enter a room, they know how to hold a room, they command a room, and they know how to exit. So think about the rule of three now. When you walk into a room, you immediately set the tone in the visual, 55% and 38% tonality. They're not even listening to your words. They're just enamored of the way you walked into that room. This gravitas is a lot like art. I can't exactly describe it, but I know it when I see it. I had the pleasure and the good fortune of being in the gravity of Mike Bloomberg for many years. The smartest, most generous man I've ever known. I don't know how many billions he's worth, but he'll never talk about it. I never talked money with him. He was just a wonderful CEO, incredibly supportive of our success, provided every single resource we could. And he became, if anyone is listening internationally, and you may not know, he was the mayor of New York for 3 terms, and he ran for president in the last presidential campaign. I wish he had won. He had my vote. When he walked into a room, and he was probably an inch or two smaller than me, slight, not a big physical presence, but when he walked into a room, he commanded it. And what I talk about in chapter 4 of A Climb to the Top is the body speaks before the mouth opens. And what you're describing is when somebody walks into the room, their body is speaking. And when they begin to speak, that gravitas is gravity. There's a gravity in the room. But what are they doing? It's not magical. They're looking everybody in the eye. So everybody in that room felt like they've been seen. People just want to be seen. They also want to be heard. When you bring them into the discussion, you look them in the eye, check, see. You ask them their opinion. Oh my God, Mike Bloomberg asked me my opinion? Wow, I'll never forget that. Me, what could I possibly teach him? He let us be heard. And if you're seen and you're heard, the human being's most natural inclination is a sense of belonging. We want to feel like we're part of a community, and you can't do that if you don't feel like you belong. So these great, Barack Obama, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, probably my hero, and Winston Churchill. I think Winston Churchill and Mandela were my heroes. I watched every movie, I've read every book about those two gentlemen in totally different walks of life, different countries. They had it. But what did they do? It's the way they made people feel. Everyone who was in their gravity was seen. Everyone was heard. They made you feel like you matter and that you were there. That's what the great leaders do. I hope I can only aspire to be them. I certainly follow the tools that they have communicated to us on how to do it. I think some have a certain natural ability that they build on. But what I can say, none of it is an accident. They are all designed, conditioned, developed to be that.
What do you think it is? I know I take your point about it's very tough to explain. It's something we don't understand. But what do you think this aura is? And please feel free to dive into mysticism. I don't want any science in this.
Yeah.
But I always get the feeling that this is something beyond what's tangible, beyond what we understand. Science is not advanced enough to actually quantify what's happening here. Do you have a hunch on what's actually happening? I mean, we know they do it. We know we feel it. But is there something beyond?
If you look at in the Renaissance, there was a French scientist, philosopher named Descartes. And Descartes talked about the mind. And he talked about in the evolution of the Renaissance that we as human beings, what makes us so different is our minds. And that our minds are number one. In the 1990s, a guy from UCLA or USC, a guy from California named Antonio Damasio wrote a book called Descartes' Error. And what he talked about is we are not thinking machines. Descartes had it wrong. We're feeling machines. That's what makes us different. It's the way we feel. We are the only species. Maybe you could say it about a dog because you can sense when they're happy, but we are the only species that smiles and we frown. And you can tell if we're happy or sad by our eyes, by our mouth, by our body language. And what he talked about is this heart, that the mind and the heart are always a tug of war. And there's an old quote, the longest journey that any human being ever takes is the 18 inches that separates the heart from their mind. Because in school, we're taught all about the mind. You get great grades, that has nothing to do with the heart. And then you get into the world of business, of creating movements, of creating communities, that's all heart. I think what's going on there is not meant for us to be able to deconstruct it from the mind. I think that's what makes us human. I don't think we're meant to apply a metric to what's going on here. You, particularly, Shalaj, or anyone who's a data science major, you try to make sense of the world through business analytics, and I get it, and it's a cool thing. And it has its place. But I think there are some things in the human spirit that are not meant to be measured, that we can't explain. And that's how I feel when I'm in the presence of Winston Churchill. I can't bring science to that. I can only tell you if Nelson Mandela were to walk into the room right now, what I would do, I'd probably faint. Oh my God, my hero is in the room. That's not the mind. That's how we feel. And I regret that the educational model doesn't pay any credence to it. It's only about your mind. It's wrong. I think how we feel is a big factor in the lives that we live, the lives that we decide to make for ourselves, how we define success. Is success the path to happiness, or is happiness the path to success? I don't think we've answered that well. I don't think people have even thought about what's the difference. I see people succeeding and they're miserable. I've seen other people that don't succeed in the standard that someone else may apply, but they are very happy people, and those are the ones I want to be around. So what you're describing, I don't think it's meant to have an answer. All the scientists and the brilliant engineers here in this institution, we're doing this from Columbia University. God, they are intelligent and smart. I love it. I love hanging around them. But there's just some things they're not meant to explain, and I think we should just let it be.